chapter 2, we're going to be going over buying an automobile. And there's a lot that goes along with that. I've worked at the car dealership that I'm currently at for the last 16 years. And I've seen a lot of things in terms of car sales. I've always worked on the maintenance side of it. I've always done the going through and doing the maintenance, but I am oftentimes involved in the sales aspect of it too. I've also I'm a absolute sucker for really crappy cars, and I've bought a fair share of frankly terrible vehicles. So I'm going to kind of give you a rundown of what I have learned in the industry in terms of buying and selling a vehicle. Now, the big thing that we're going to be looking at, the big objectives is, determining a budget, what you need versus what you want, and then looking at the different types of vehicles you can buy, where you can buy a vehicle, and the process that goes along with that. Now, a vehicle purchase is pretty big. Like I said, I like really crappy vehicles. So this first statement here, second to a home purchase, automobile will probably be the next largest financial investment. I like to buy cars really crappy and really cheap. But for the most part, the average person, it might be the biggest expense that they have. For sure, all of you in this class are fairly young. You're all going to be, this is going to be your first really big purchase, is buying an automobile. And cars have gotten exorbitantly expensive. We've kind of seen prices mellow out post-pandemic now that we have the supply chains all back up and running and there's a fair amount of stock. However, we are looking at, it's really easy to get too much car for your means and not have enough financial backing to be able to pay the car off. And it's going to be really important for you to set a budget for that. And it's not just a budget for the car itself, it's also a budget for how you're going to operate, use, and have the vehicle function. It is very easy to become underwater on a vehicle. Underwater meaning you owe more money than the vehicle is worth. So you could have a car that you've taken a loan out for, and over the years it's gotten more and more worn out, and you're trying to get a new car, but you still owe a vast amount of money on it. And I see this a lot. I have a lot of customers come into the service department with a vehicle that's a little bit older, and they need a lot of repair work. And I end up having to talk with them about, like, hey, look, it might not be financially a good idea to put, $5,000 into this vehicle. It's only worth $4,000. And then they go, well, I still owe $7,000 on it. That's considered a vehicle that is underwater, meaning that you could sell the vehicle outright and you wouldn't have enough money to pay off the loan. We will probably start seeing this as a more prolific problem in the next 5 to 6 years. And that is because there's a lot of vehicles that were bought during the pandemic with a premium added to the normal sticker price of the vehicle. So people were paying over MSRP of the vehicle. And in a lot of cases, it was a fair amount of money. The highest one that I saw at my dealership, and I'm not defending my dealership whatsoever, there were a bunch of crooks. Someone was buying a Ram T-Rex, and it was $58,000 above sticker. The truck itself, MSRP was around $102,000, which is way too much money for a pickup truck. Even though, yes, it's a 707 horsepower, 6.2 liter supercharged all-wheel drive, whiz bang suspension under it. That's still not what you should be spending on a pickup truck. That's way too much. So that made it $160,000 pickup truck. That truck will depreciate over time, and at that point the owner of that vehicle will be underwater at some point with that vehicle. Almost all vehicles do lose value over time, so that is something to keep in mind. There's only a very small finite amount of vehicles that did not lose any value wise, and they keep their value up. It also is going to be one of those important things to kind of remember. You need to look at what you're buying the vehicle for, what you're using it for, and you kind of have to balance that needs versus wants. So you need a vehicle to get to work, you need a vehicle to get to school, you need a vehicle to do your typical errands and stuff to get you around where you need to go. but you might want something different, you know. And here in Southern California, the thing that I see quite a bit is there's a lot of people that want a large truck. They want that big Super Duty. They want to have that, you know, power and presence on the road, that they're, that they've taken control of stuff. And the reality is do you actually need that? Probably not. I work on many pickup trucks that have never had anything in the bed that is of a considerable weight or what that truck actually is capable of doing. You know, and it is one of those things that you can have a trailer and you could, haul motorcycles and dune buggies and whatever out to the desert occasionally, and you need a larger truck like that, and that's fine. But you might also want to have a smaller economy car to get you to and from work. Now, areas of parking around where you live could be an issue. So it is one of those things you really need to make sure you understand of what you need in your car, not necessarily what you want. I'm a firm believer in, have a daily driver that's reliable that'll get you to and from work, and then you can have a project car on the side and make that car the car that you want. Biggest thing you need to look at too is your budget. Even whether or not it's a car you want or whether or not it's a car you need, you still need to properly budget for that vehicle. So when we're determining a budget, it's not just the price of the vehicle. Oftentimes people will get hung up on just the price. We're looking at, there's other factors too that go along with that. So we're looking at taxes. Now there's going to be county, state, and federal taxes that go along with any car purchase, whether or not it be new or used. We're also going to have license plate or registration expenses that go along with that, insurance of that vehicle, maintenance, unexpected repairs, and then the fuel cost of that vehicle. So when we're looking at all of those are all going to fluctuate depending on whether or not it's a new or used car. So when we look at insurance, for instance, insurance is one of those things. If you have a used car, it's pretty stable. A new car, though, you have to have full coverage. So, to cover if that car gets a total loss, so you could pay it off. It also, too, because newer cars, the components are going to be more expensive. We're going to have the insurance premium be a little bit higher. License plates, too. So if you're just playing your generic license plate, that's one thing. But vehicle registration and license and tags are going to be based off of how much emissions that vehicle puts out, and as well the weight. So how much wear and tear that vehicle is going to put on our modern roadways surfaces. So for instance, that example of that little Hyundai Accent and that Ford Super Duty on the prior slide, that Ford Super Duty is going to have far greater registration amount attached to it because it's a really large, heavy vehicle that is doing damage to our roads, where the Hyundai Accent isn't. It also is producing out more emissions, so on and so forth. Now, you have an old enough vehicle that's not classifiable. So like my 64 Ford, it's not classifiable. So I pay the bare minimum. I pay $1 above the bare minimum registration fee, and it's anywhere between $72 to $78, I think, is what it's going to be this year. Because it does fluctuate based off of economic status in the area. But you can look at easily registration being $500 to $600 a year. And again, that's something you need to budget for because you have to pay for that registration every single year. Unexpected repairs too. You're looking at, how reliable that vehicle is going to be in 3, 5, 10 years from now. Average ownership of a vehicle. So the vehicles operating on the roadways today, we're looking at it being close to 12 years. All vehicles being 12 years old. Currently, I'm driving a vehicle that's 18 years old. And I have my 64 Ford, which is way over 50. My other truck that I drive all the time is 23 years old. And again, but I'm a sucker for older vehicles, so for every new vehicle, there's also a vehicle that's a lot older on there. How much fuel you're going to be consuming is another big one. If you're doing big, long commutes, if you're driving a great distance, I know a lot of people that do that, a lot of people that travel really, really far, they need to make sure they're classifying for how much fuel they're going to be using, right? And that's going to kind of go along with that budget. You also need to have some money to be able to put down. So it's very rare that you can buy a car outright. And in fact, in most cases, if you were to go to a dealership with a big, bag of cash and go, here's some cash, I want to buy that car, they'll tell you to get out. Because that is not necessarily legal. And it is one of those things that a lot of people will look at that as a money laundering scam. So you need to have a little bit of money to put down. 20% is about the amount that you can put down. Oftentimes in a car purchase, a lot of times trading in a car is how you're going to be able to get some of that down payment accounted for. However, some of you might be buying your very first car and you don't have that ability to have a car to trade in. So you need to be able to look at what you can put down, and that will affect your budget. Now, again, comparing to what you want versus what you need, there's a couple things you looked at. We already brought up fuel efficiency and reliability, but on and off-road capabilities, this one's kind of funny because, again, you can buy a four-wheel drive vehicle because you have aspirations of being a rugged off-roader. However, you're not going to be using the four-wheel drive system while you're driving on the public streets. And you really kind of got to be honest with yourself. How often am I going to be driving this vehicle off-road? Is it going to be every weekend? Is it going to be once a month? Is it going to be once a year? And you got to kind of balance that and see what you want to do. Is it going to be worthwhile for you to go buy a Jeep, put like an 8-inch lift on it, and run 37-inch tires with, remote dampened shocks and a winch and everything, and you only go off-road twice a year? No, you're going to be spending a lot of time in fuel, or a lot of money in fuel, and a lot of time with reliability issues. So you do need to kind of take that into consideration. How fast the car can go. So performance vehicles, again, you're looking at like, I want the fastest car I could possibly get. However, now we look at insurance, and insurance, if it is considered a sports car, you're kind of hosed with that. We'll go over this a little bit in greater detail in chapter 4, but getting insurance, unfortunately, a vast majority of you in this class are young men under the age of 25. You're going to be paying a lot for insurance, an absolute ton, because you were considered a high risk driver. There are more vehicle accidents involving young men under 25 than any other age group or demographic. Interesting enough, once you get over the age of 25, if you have a fairly clean driving record, meaning you have no tickets and no accidents, you'll watch your insurance plummet the second you turn 25. It's often funny, people have these different, time frames on when they become an adult, right? So you look at like 18, now I can vote, and I'm an adult now. And 21, I can buy alcohol, and I'm an adult now. And it's like, no, you're not an adult until you're 25, because that's when you can get a rental car. When you can get a rental car and you can get cheap insurance, now you're an adult. You've made it. So it is one of those things that, you will be paying more insurance. And if the faster the car you have, classification of that car, whether or not it being a large truck, SUV, or sports car, will also affect that. Passenger cargo hauling. Again, if you're going to have to haul people, you want to not to get a two-door vehicle. You want to make sure you're getting a four-door with ample seating and so on and so forth. If you're going to be hauling heavy loads, that's going to be another one. If you're using it for work, whatever it happens to be, those are going to be some of the things that you have to take into consideration. Now, once you've met that budget and you kind of have an idea of balancing what you need and what you want, you need to look at what you can actually get in terms of loan wise. Now, credit is one of those things that is inherently unfair. And again, I'm telling you this as someone that's had to deal with this throughout their entire life. You don't get credit unless you have a rapport with credit lenders that you can pay back that loan. Now, the higher risk you are to not paying that loan or defaulting on that loan, the lower your credit score, the higher the interest rate, the less opportunity you have for getting money. It's very ironic, once you start to get a fair amount of debt, it's very easy to get more debt, especially if you show that you can pay it off at a fair basis. However, you can be extremely fiscally responsible and not overspend your means, but not have anything on credit, and you have a very low credit score at that point. Now, there's a variety of things that can affect credit score. For the most part, you're all going to be starting very low because you don't have any form of credit. Oftentimes, to build credit, you have to get a credit card. Oftentimes, moving out or renting will help your credit, but you need to make sure that the person that you're paying, the landlord or whoever you're paying rent to, is reporting that, because you can be paying rent to a family member that doesn't affect your credit. So that won't build your credit up to where you can then get a loan for a vehicle or a home in the future. So you do need to make sure you're paying attention to that. How you manage your loan too. So if you get a credit card, You know, don't be doing the minimum payments once a month. You should be doing multiple payments throughout the month. So you don't want to pay off the whole balance. You know, oftentimes people going like, I put however many $100 and then I pay it off that month. That also isn't necessarily good. Uh, Creditors are looking that you can maintain a debt. What they normally like to see that boosts your score up is that you maintain 30% of whatever is that card or that loan can handle. So if you have a credit card, you know, that's $1,000, if you can maintain $300 on that at all times and make multiple small payments through the month. So instead of making maybe $100 payment every month, you make, you know, four $25 or, you know, a $50 and then two $25 payments. That shows that you're managing that credit and you're keeping on that loan, and that will actually boost your credit score a lot faster. Now, why this is important, interest rates are very, very key. We're in a time frame right now where interest rates are really, really high, especially for large purchases like cars and homes. So if we look at an average interest rate, you know, if we're looking at like 3.9% for instance, that monthly payment, you know, will be $177. And we'll have, you know, a total of $6,372 that we've spent over the life of that $6,000 loan. So $372 of that will be going off to the bank. Now that's for a traditional 36-month loan or 3-year loan. You know, we jumped that up to by 4 points. Our monthly payment's now $488, and the bank is getting $768. We get it to 11.9%, almost a $200 monthly payment. We're looking at the bank is getting $1,164. And that's not going towards the value of your vehicle or paying off your loan. And it's important to understand that if you're buying a vehicle for $6,000, it is only ever going to depreciate. It's not going to increase in value. It's very rare that vehicles increase in value. Bear that in mind. I know that there's a lot of collector cars out there that have increased in value. That is for a finite period of time. That will not be the case in a couple of years. So it's important to understand that. Now, you all being young, car lots will prey on you in the sense that they are hoping that you're going to be buying out of passion. So you're going to see a car and be like, man, I got to have that one. I got to have that thing. And you're going to buy that car out of passion and not really pay attention to what you're signing for. I do know a couple individuals that have purchased vehicles with, you know, interest rates that are deep double digits. One in particular, it was 19.6%, which is absolutely insane for a vehicle. Where you'll see this a lot of, unfortunately, and they try to take advantage of it, is in lower affluent areas or areas that are impacted financially, and around military bases. So any of you that are military veterans, you probably are very familiar with this, especially if you go down to like Oceanside, for instance, right outside the Marine base. They have a lot of pay here, buy here, used car lots, and those are high interest, low credit. They'll sell you anything, but they're planning on repoing the car after a certain amount of time. Those are, again, predatory type loans, and they're not a good car buy in that manner, and you want to avoid those at all costs. With a couple exceptions. And I have an exception that's sitting right behind me, that I drove in today. That is kind of an interesting thing. Now, you don't always have to buy a car. You don't have to buy a car outright, new. You can lease a vehicle, and there's different advantages and disadvantages to doing this. Now, I did have a lease for a number of years, that I did end up rolling over and purchasing the car outright. It was a car for my wife, and there was some benefits to that. Now, in terms of ownership, you don't own a lease. You extensively have a long-term rental car. It's an agreement anywhere between, you know, 3 years to 5 years, based off of, you know, what agreement you signed to. Now, the monthly payments are going to be a lot lower. You're also not paying interest on it. So the interest rate for my lease when I had it was 0.00001%. Effectively nothing. Had to be something, but effectively it's nothing. To where if you are purchasing a vehicle, you will have a higher monthly payment because you're paying off that loan, the principal of that loan plus the interest that goes along with that, and that then will allow it to be a little bit higher. So you can sometimes get more bang for your buck with a lease. So I'm going to give you an example. For in my case, it was for a Mazda CX-5, and if I were to buy it, my monthly payment would be $454 a month. The lease, however, was $303 a month, so considerably lower. Now, down payment is required when you purchase a vehicle. In most cases, if you're not putting the down payment on, you really need to reconsider what you're doing. You need to have a down payment because that lowers the effective principal and gets you a better loan. In terms of down payment for lease, you're not. Some will require a security deposit. However, that's not necessarily going to always be the case, especially now. You can oftentimes get a loan that does not require a security deposit. Mileage and travel. Now, if you own the vehicle, you drive it as much as you want, drive it where you want, drive it how you want, so on and so forth. You own that vehicle. Well, the bank owns the title of that vehicle, but you effectively are the registered owner of that vehicle. When it comes to a lease, you are bound by the amount of mileage. Auto manufacturers will do leases because what a lease is a lease is going to be a good, reliable used car in 3 years. So what they're hoping for, the manufacturer's hoping that you step into another lease once you're done with yours. So you go out, once you're at the end of your lease agreement, you trade the vehicle in, or not trade the vehicle in, but you trade out for another lease. You go off in a newer vehicle, and then that manufacturer's dealership has a very good, high quality used car that they can sell. One of the other nice things that you have with that is most leases have a guaranteed buyout value. Now, this was very particularly beneficial to me in my situation because I bought the car pre-pandemic, and the lease agreement ended when the pandemic was still kind of affecting car prices. So I actually I bought out the car, but I could have sold it and then made some money on it. The kind of caveat with that is my wife still needed a car to drive the kids around, so we would have had to spend more on another vehicle. But what it did mean though is that I'm not going to be underwater on this particular car loan, or I won't be underwater for a considerable amount of time, which is nice. It means that my overall cost is going to be relatively manageable. You can customize a car that you own. If you buy a car, you can do whatever you want to it. Leasing, yeah, don't do any customization to it. You actually might get fined for it. You might get dinged for it when you do the trade-in process, when you have to give the car back. You also don't get any equity. And again, depreciation, we brought up the depreciated value. My car, so its MSRP was $24,000. Its agreed upon depreciated value after 3 years was going to be $16,000. To which I had to get a loan for that $16,000. At the end of that loan, or at the end of the lease agreement, the nice thing was the car was worth about 22 at the time, so I wasn't at a point where I'd be underwater with the car. Now damage, you do have to have full coverage on a lease. You are responsible for fixing that. Same thing with maintenance. Now you can't sell a lease. You have to return a lease back to the manufacturer. Now, one of the things I kind of do want to bring up is I'm going to go back a couple slides. In terms of lease agreements, in terms of loans, it was very traditional to have either a 3-year or 5-year loan. So 36-month lease or loan agreement, or a 60, which is a 5-year lease or loan agreement. However, there are a lot of manufacturers and a lot of banks and financial institutions that have pushed this further. There's 72-month, and then there's 96-month loans. Those are way too long to get into. Again, cars are going to depreciate. You do not want to sign on the dotted line if it's a 72-month or if it is a 96-month loan. You want to kind of leave it to a 5-year loan. Because again, when we're looking at the car's value and how much it's going to depreciate quite a bit. Now, if you're going to turn around and sell that car within a year and a half, and you're doing that for a little bit easier payments, that's one thing. But do have an understanding that you're going to get to a tipping point where that car's value is going to tank, and your loan is still going to have to be paid off. With the vehicles being bought with a sizable markup, that does not go into the loan or your down payment. So if you're spending $10,000 above sticker, your down payment is going to pay that off. It's not going to the principal of the loan. And so you basically are buying a car with no down payment at that point. So that's where we're going to have a big issue in a couple of years of people being really deep underwater on these cars that they've purchased, and it's going to be something that unfortunately is going to have a ripple effect in the industry. Oftentimes, if you do still owe on a car loan, what they'll do is they'll just roll that over into the next loan. I have seen several individuals where they bought a car, they come underwater on the loan, they need to go buy another one, and they just roll the residual loan amount into the new car payment. And again, that's just compounding issues of debt. Again, that's why you need to make a budget, live within your means, and determine, if that's what you want to get. Now, why I bring up the year range. So it kind of goes along with vehicle warranties. So when we look at the warranties are broken down into a couple different subcategories, but the important ones we want to look at are the bumper to bumper, or the 3-year, 36,000 miles, and then the powertrain and restraint warranties. Now, bumper to bumper means everything is covered with the exception of batteries, tires, clutches, and brake pads. Those are the 4 things that are not covered under bumper to bumper warranties typically. Batteries now sort of have, because batteries are coming with a 3-year warranty just in general. So those oftentimes will still have a small form of warranty that correspond with them, but other componentry does not. We look at brakes and clutches, for instance, and tires. Those can all be taken down based off of vehicle habits and how the vehicle is being operated. When I was a Mitsubishi tech, the Evo 8 came out, and we had several that were bought on a Friday and then towed in on a Monday or a Tuesday with no clutch in it. And they had less than 1,000 miles on it, and the person didn't know how to drive stick shift. And unfortunately, it was a conversation we had to have that you're a buyer for it. Sorry, you have to buy this clutch because it is you've wrecked it. So it is something to take into consideration. Now, why that's important for that loan amount, right? I brought up that you can get underwater on a vehicle's loan, and then compounding, if it's unreliable, is going to be you might have to get another loan or put money aside for replacement of components. Now, the bumper to bumper is covering everything, so everything in terms of trim, seats, stuff like that. That ends either after 3 years or 36,000 miles, and it's whatever comes first. So if you burn through that 36,000 miles within 2 years of ownership, your bumper to bumper warranty is expired. It's whatever comes first. Or you can have a vehicle that you never drive whatsoever. You got 3,000 miles on, but after that 3 years, that warranty goes away. Powertrain is going to be everything that is oil lubricated. So the engine, transmission, differential, and other driveline components. And that is typically 5 years, 60,000 miles. There are a couple manufacturers that have 100,000 mile warranties for their powertrains, and that's fantastic. The better the warranty you have, the better off you are. And it is going to be one of those things that you want to make sure you're staying on top of. Now, why you want to stay under your powertrain warranty is the powertrain warranty. Those are going to be the big ticket items. So your engines, transmissions, differentials, drivelines, those will be expensive to replace. I just recently helped out someone at the dealership, and I halved the labor that I normally would charge for the job. Did just a left side cylinder head and just engine mounts on this particular Jeep, and the bill was $4,000 with parts and labor. And the vehicle's not worth that, or that'd be a considerable amount to have to pay off. If it was under warranty, then that's not a cost that you have to incur. That's under powertrain. The manufacturer covers that. So again, that's something that you need to take into consideration. I have very, very, very easily mechanically totaled vehicles where I can find enough repairs the vehicle has to where they won't be able to fix it or in a cost-effective manner. Now we look at a couple other warranties that we have. So there's corrosion or perforation. So this is going to be, rust. Not something that we necessarily have to deal with in California, but those are typically 5-year 80,000 or 5-year 100,000. I know it says unlimited miles. That's not necessarily the case anymore. In emissions states, so California is one of those. It is California law that large ticket items for emission systems, catalytic converters, PCM, so on and so forth, those fall under an 8-year 80,000 mile warranty. So it's benefits living in California. And then hybrid systems, so the high voltage battery pack, motor generator units. Those are looking at 8-year, 100,000 mile interval for those. So that is one of those things that you kind of want to look at. Now, in terms of warranty, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the automotive expenses. You absolutely, under no circumstance, ever want to purchase an outside company's warranty. You only want a warranty plan from a manufacturer, not from a dealership, not from somewhere you saw after watching a Jerry Springer episode on TV, nothing on the back of a bus. None of those are good. Not a single one. I don't care what anyone says. I can tell you from the industry, we've turned people away because of their aftermarket warranties. You want to make sure that it is manufacturer backed. You also want to make sure that you're buying that warranty at a time that it actually is needed, and you're not going to want to double up on that. Sorry about that, dropped down my controller. Now there's a couple different places that we can buy vehicles. Now the statement up here, shopping locally can benefit you because it's contributing to your community. I've actually seen in the pandemic recently with car purchases, it used to be you could almost go anywhere. And a good friend of mine was trying to look for a RAV4 Prime. They were going as far afield, and they live here in Southern California. They're going as far afield as Maryland to try to see if they could find this vehicle, and no one would sell it to him if he wasn't local. And the reason for that is there's tax incentives the dealerships have. On top of that, a car dealership's primary goal is to sell a vehicle so that they can service it later, right? It's often said that the sales brings the glitz and glamour to the dealership, but the service department doing the maintenance and repair work to the vehicle is what keeps the lights on and pays the rent for the building. So it is one of those things that oftentimes they will want you to be servicing the car with them regularly. And why it is so crucial to buy or sell local. So you're usually looking at that, but we Southern California is pretty big. It doesn't take that much to drive up the freeway a little bit to where you can go and get a fairly substantial discount on buying a car not too far away. So it is important to be looking at prices and comparing that, not just going to the very dealership around the corner and trusting that as the best price that you could get. We live in a day and age now too where you can look everything up in terms of price on online. So the car that I leased for my wife that we ended up buying out, I bought it from my auto manufacturer, or my dealership group owns a Mazda dealership, and I'm very good friends with the sales manager there. And I looked online on our stock units of what ones they had, and I picked out 4. I basically texted my buddy JR and we're like, hey, I'm interested in one of these 4 stock unit numbers. What do you think? And he's all, those 2 are the 2 that are going to be the money. And he ended up having them for me, and we had the agreement done in about 20 minutes when I came in the next day. When you're looking at stuff online, again, when we're balancing that your needs versus your wants, one of the things you might want is a particular color car, but let that be flexible. The best way to get a good deal on a new car is to get a car that's been sitting on the sales lot for a little bit. So that might mean it has an off color or an off package that goes along with it. If you can live with it, it can save you a considerable amount of money. Now, there's the dealership internet sales, when you go online and you get the quote and you can be talking to someone online, that is effectively a car salesman, and they're just like if you were to go into the brick and mortar store, and you can do some negotiations and get a really good price there. There's auto buying programs. Now there's benefits and negatives to that. I'm going to give you kind of the one that you're going to probably all be familiar with the most is Costco. Costco does have, when you leave Costco, there's a couple like new cars sitting out front, and they do have a program to where you can purchase a vehicle through them. Here's the thing you got to keep in mind though: when you're buying a car through Costco, You're not buying it through the dealership network. It is federal law that all new cars have to be bought through a dealership. It is a franchise of a manufacturer. Now, there are some legal go-arounds, Tesla being one of them, that every Tesla that is sold is considered an out-of-state vehicle. Tesla will actually truck their vehicles out of state for a little bit of time and then bring them back in, and you're buying it as an out-of-state purchase, which is a loophole that they have found to get around having to have a dealership network. When you're dealing with Costco, for instance, Costco, has their main office building that they in whatever state they happen to be in, so it's then also considered an out-of-state sale. When that happens, if you buy a car through like a sales program like that, don't be surprised if they treat you really shitty at the dealership, because the dealership does not get any credit for that sale of that car. And in fact, oftentimes when like stock or the amount of vehicles that they have to sell is really low, they're basically going to huck the keys at you and say, okay, there's the door, see ya. And it's funny, oftentimes people associate dealership with the manufacturer. I get told all the time, when I wear my tech uniform, my Chrysler uniform, like, oh, you guys build crappy cars. It's like, I don't build the cars. I work for a franchise that sells and services these cars. I don't build them though. I have no say in any of that. It's the same thing when you buy a car through these auto buying programs, is you've bought it through Costco, like they're the customer service representative you want. So as long as you're okay with that, you can sometimes get a decent price on a vehicle, but don't be expecting the salesperson to have a water or a cappuccino waiting for you and program your phone and show you all the features. You're basically going to huck the keys to you and say, see ya. There's also fleet sales. Fleet sales is doing high volume. That's going to be for major businesses. We have a whole fleet sale sector of our dealership, and they're selling anywhere between 10 to 100 cars at a time. Typically, it's going to be work vans and trucks. But again, that is a way that you can buy vehicles if you have the opportunity to where you might have a family member that's buying a large fleet purchase and you can get a vehicle tagged onto that. You might be able to get a discount there, although a lot of dealerships are kind of they won't allow that to happen. Now every new car is going to have a window sticker, and the window sticker is going to have required federal mandated information on it. So it's going to be a big long sticker. They're about 26 inches long by about 18 inches deep, and there's going to be a plethora of information on it. It can often also be called the Maroni label, and that's because it lists all of the different features that the vehicle has. Now, the window sticker is going to have a couple little sections that are going to be isolated. The first one's going to be the manufacturer's suggested retail price, or MSRP. That's going to be something we'll talk about here in a little bit greater detail here in a second. It will give all the engine transmission specifications, the standard equipment, plus the warranty details from the manufacturer that go along with that vehicle. You will also have a subsection for optional equipment and pricing. This is the one you want to be really careful of, because there can be added stuff put into this that you might not see. And again, if you're buying out of passion, you might not be paying enough attention to. There also is going to be the required fuel economy ratings that vehicle has to have and has to meet, as well as the National Highway Transportation Safety Association, or the NHTSA crash safety test ratings for the vehicle. Now, you will also have to, oftentimes the origin and area that car was built in, along with color codes and exterior packages, interior packages, so on and so forth. So if I use the sticker here for an example, this vehicle is a car line that was sold for the US Canada market. 65% of those are from US Canada, 15% from Japan. The vehicle's final assembly point was Baja, Mexico. And the country of origin that the vehicle is coming from is parts are meant for the U.S. and transmissions from the U.S. So you can kind of see you might be buying a vehicle that's domestic, that's supposedly built here, and it's not. It's built overseas. So oftentimes I'll get people that have bought like a Dodge Charger or Challenger. Those aren't built here; they're built in Canada. And so it is a North American built car. Same thing with Baja, Mexico, is still a North American built car, but it's not a car that was built here. Now you can then look at like a Hyundai Sonata, for instance. Hyundai Sonata is built fully assembled and fully built in Louisiana. So that is a car that's built domestically, or within this realm. And you can track that if that is important to you. It's one of the things that is important to me. I do like to know the country of origin. So I have the full country of origin of where my Subaru came from, and my other pickup truck. I was able to track exactly where everything came from, and so on and so forth. Now, this is the sticker that you need to be careful with. This is the dealership addendum sticker. So oftentimes this will be a secondary part of the window sticker, or a part that they will put over the final MSRP price. Why you want to be careful with this is there can be some stuff hidden in here that you don't necessarily want to pay for, and it can add up to a considerable amount. Now, as we can see, as this example that I have here, we have a $29,780 vehicle as its MSRP, and there's 3 different add-ons that have been added to it, totaling to a total of $895 to bring the grand total to $30,675. Now, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at 29,700 versus 30,600, that doesn't seem like a considerable amount of money. And the salesperson or the finance officer that's talking to you about this stuff is going to go, "Oh, it's an extra $2 a month that you're paying. You're only paying $2 a month," and you're thinking, "Man, I can do $2 extra a month." But when we look at some of this stuff, it's kind of snake oil. So the protective coating or the tough coat or whatever iron coating, whatever they want to call it, it's basically half-assed ceramic coating. It's really just an expensive detail. You can do that yourself at home with higher quality componentry. You don't need to be spending a ton of money on that. We can look at that in the terms of this being $550. You can definitely do it for cheaper. You can pay a professional to do a very, very good job with it. The one that really kind of boils my blood is nitrogen air in the tires. And effectively why this is kind of a big deal is oftentimes all dealerships do is they go out and change out the valve stems to green. Here's the reality: nitrogen makes up 78% of the air that we're breathing. If you were to properly purge it and put it as 100% nitrogen, is that tire going to last longer? Or are you going to lose air any less quicker? No. It is used in motorsports applications. It is a more stable gas than that of the mixed gas. However, the majority of the air that your tire has is already nitrogen that's in it. And you don't need to be paying $150 for something that they probably did nothing to. First aid kits and cargo nets are another big ones that are hidden on that, as well as vehicle alarm systems. Alarm systems, all modern vehicles have alarms. You all have a key fob that has the little panic button on the back, right? And there's already a car alarm installed. You don't need to have a secondary one. You can get a discount on insurance with having a car alarm on. However, I have found that usually is detrimental to the vehicle's operation later in life, because the electronics that go into that car alarm are not very robust, and they can cause a lot of drivability issues. So again, you don't really necessarily want to be paying for that. And oftentimes all vehicles will have the car alarm installed in a dealership, and it just gets activated later down the line. So you do want to make sure that is removed, or you remove it yourself if possible, so that you don't have it being an issue down the line. This is also the area where you'll see the above sticker markups. And you need them to really explain the above dealer markups. A lot of dealerships are still trying to do it. They're hoping that because the consumership is now used to it and it's so prevalent that they can keep doing it. Do not be afraid to walk away from a car salesman or a car deal. Don't be afraid of that. It's part of the sales process. The other thing you don't want to do is when you do sit down, don't give them your driver's license or anything that they can hold hostage against you to keep you in that seat. Negotiate the price then and there. They don't need to do a credit report on you unless you're going through them for credit. The reality is you can probably get a better deal through like a credit union. and have all that loan information, because you want to be able to walk away from that deal at any point in any time. Now, the fuel economy standards and the environmental standards, the important thing with this is, again, when we talked about budgeting for the vehicle, we're looking at fuel efficiency, how much fuel you're going to spend, as well as your registration are all going to kind of be corresponding to this little rectangle here. So if we're looking at our fuel economy, we're seeing an average fuel economy of 38 mpg on gasoline only, and it has 98 mpge if it is in a full electric mode. But you can see there's some fine print. It says for a charge time of 4 hours, and that is within 34 miles. So you're getting 98 miles per gallon for 34 miles. Doesn't really equate, but it is a fairly fuel effective vehicle. And it says, you save over 5 years, $8,100 over a conventional vehicle as new. So that's kind of a good rating in terms of fuel costs. It will give you your annual fuel costs. Looking at, you're going to be spending about $900 a year. That goes off of, I believe it is a driving distance of 12,000 miles for that specification. It's 10 to 12 around there. The one that's going to affect your registration is going to be that lower section. So the fuel economy and greenhouse gas rating, and then the smog rating. That, along with the weight of the vehicle, will allow you to have cheaper registration year round, and you won't be paying the premiums for that. So you do want to make sure that you're looking at all of that stuff in terms of the fuel economy. Now, we can have on the fuel economy spec, there's going to be gasoline vehicles, flex fuel vehicles, so the vehicles that can run on E85 or gasoline. Not all vehicles have that as an option, so it is important to make sure that you are paying attention to that and in terms of that fuel economy standard, because again, vehicles that are 85, they're going to get worse gas mileage. However, the fuel costs will be lower over time. Diesel is going to have its own separate. It's going to have a D in the fuel pump or the fuel area, and then the different forms of the electric charging. The bottom one, hydrogen fuel cell, we live in the only market in the United States that you can have a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. There's around 78 filling stations between here and the Bay Area. So there is a fair amount. It is something that is becoming more and more prevalent. Now, vehicle reliability, that's going to be another thing that is going to be kind of key. I often get asked as a mechanic, what cars are reliable? It's important to understand, me as a mechanic, I am only seeing the broken cars. Every manufacturer has one or two cars that they go the distance that I will never see. PT Cruisers are cars that I used to work on quite a bit because they were extremely popular and they were extremely unreliable. However, I know for a fact there's a couple PT Cruisers out there that are upwards of deep triple-digit miles that have never been to the dealership for anything, and they've had no major issues because of circumstances, how it was driven, the environment that it was driven in, how it was maintained and operated. And so that's going to be one of those things that is going to be something that is taken into consideration. However, it is important to note that that isn't always set in stone. You can have cars that otherwise would be known for really reliability that might not be. In terms of reliability, my advice for you is never buy the first model year run of a new car. So don't go running out to be the first one to have a new car. Usually you're dealing with that having adverse effect on you're being the beta tester for the most part. You also, again, when you're buying cars out of passion, if you're buying a sports car and you're not treating it like a sports car or a four-wheel drive vehicle and you're not using it, that then will increase its unreliability. And you want to make sure that you're meeting that and not having any issues corresponding with that. And every manufacturer has their pluses and minuses in terms of how reliable they are. Do your research on Better Business Bureau as well as Consumer Reports, and you want to try to avoid those cars that have those kind of issues. Now, in terms of safety ratings, again, you want to look at the safety rating of a vehicle. When we're looking at that, it's an important thing to understand that crash test safety is done at 55 miles per hour is the maximum speed that vehicles reach. We already talked about driving on the freeway, you're way exceeding that. Anytime you exceed that velocity, you're amplifying the force by 4 times. So when you're looking at safety of a vehicle, this is really pretty paramount. There's a bunch of different tests that they do. So there's the small overlap or 50% overlap crash. That's the one that we famously see where the cars crash into the brick wall that's not stationary, as a 3/4 or a half crash. We're looking at side impact, roof strength, rollover strength, and then head and seat restraints. And cars get different ratings based off of that. What you're wanting to look at is you're wanting to try to stay in the good and acceptable range. Marginal is not. It's often thought, again, with these people that are going out and buying really large vehicles, trucks and SUVs, that because they are a large vehicle that they're safer, and that's inherently not true. We're looking at the kinetic energy that vehicle has when it comes to a stop is going to be far greater than that of a smaller vehicle. So it is going to be one of those things that it isn't necessarily safer. We're also looking at the rollover possibilities for a vehicle that is larger being much greater. So it is something that you do want to take into consideration in terms of collision. Now, they can be rated in a star rating, 5 being the best. You really don't want to have any car that's below 3. And that's going to be kind of one of the things that's important. So when we look at like overall front star rating is 4, 5-star and a 3-star for a rollover is the example vehicle that we gave here. It also is one of those things too, when we look at safety features of a vehicle, safety features of a vehicle are going to vary from model year to model year, and they tend to get better and better. The NHTSI did a test a couple of years back where they crash tested 2 cars at a 3/4 head-on. They tested a 1959 Impala against a 2019 Impala, and they tested it at 55 miles per hour, where they cross hit each other. They were both 4-door sedans, both from the same manufacturer, both the same model, but they were different years. The occupants that were in the 59 Impala would have died or had major life-altering injuries. The injuries that would have been in the 2019 Impala, or it was a 16 Impala, I forget exactly what it was, they would have been able to walk away with minimal injuries, and that is because that car is designed to have to distribute the force during a collision. Now, other things that will bring down your insurance and will bring up the safety reading of a car is the different autonomous vehicle systems or advanced safety technology that the vehicle can have. So we're looking at forward-facing collision cameras or smart cruise control, lane departure systems, which I know they're annoying, but they are one of those things that are very nice to have. Rear view video systems or 360 video systems, and then emergency brake systems. Those are all different things that you look at that can bring down the overall insurance cost of the car, because you're less likely to have a claim because you have some of the systems installed. It will make the vehicle more expensive initially, but your overall cost is going to go down based off your insurance being less. So again, something that you want to try to consider when you're looking at purchasing a vehicle. Now, in this point, this slide, we need you to follow. You will always test drive a vehicle. Always. Never, don't go like, oh, that's the car I want. I want it. I need to have it. I don't care how it drives. I want it because I like how it looks. You always drive a vehicle. Always make sure you're doing a very comprehensive test drive, new or used. You always drive it. Something as simple as, will it fit in your carport or your garage is a big one. I've seen that quite a bit, where customers have bought in vehicles and they've wanted the quad cab, extended cab, long bed pickup truck, and then it won't fit in their driveway and they have to find a different place to park the vehicle. All of those different things you need to take into consideration. Does it have considerable turning radius? Is it easy to get into a parking spot? Can you get inside and out of the vehicle easily? Can you go from transitioning from the seat to out? Is it comfortable? Do you have enough headroom? Do you have enough shoulder room? Does the seat have decent bolsters? Can you hit the pedals decently? And it's going to be different for every car, right? Every car kind of sizes people up a little bit differently. I am 6'4" and 300 pounds, right? So I don't fit in a lot of sports cars. Now, I am going off of the Jeremy Clarkson adage that you can make yourself fit into any car that you want to fit into. However, it is one of those things that, you want to be comfortable with it. So I am the Viper technician. Well, Vipers, for the Gen 1 Vipers, they have the pedals skewed. So because of the large trans tunnel and engine, you're facing and you're sitting forward, but your pedals and your hips are slightly turned. So it means it's not going to be a very comfortable car over long distances, especially if you're a little bit taller. So that's stuff that you want to take into consideration. Can you adjust the mirrors to where you can safely look into it? Is the vehicle going to stop well? How's the vehicle ride in terms of noise? Are you going to be able to handle the amount of noise? All vehicles are going to have some sort of noise, whether or not it's engine noise or drone from tires or drone from the road. And then you're obviously looking at stuff that can be, out of characteristic for the car. Can you fit stuff in the center consoles, so on and so forth. So you always want to make sure you're driving the car. Now, in terms of understanding the price that goes along with the vehicle, so there's the MSRP. This is a manufacturer suggested retail price. And this is going to be on the stickers, and you're very rarely going to get a car for MSRP. You will get the dealership having a small amount of markup with it, and that is pretty standard. And that's going to be the dealership invoice. This is the dealership on what the car is paid for at the dealership level, because again, it's a franchise agreement between the manufacturer and the dealership. The dealership is purchasing the vehicle as a franchise type agreement, and they are having to make sure they're getting a little bit of profit to keep the lights on. Now, the manufacturer can have factory holdbacks or factory incentives in purchasing a vehicle, and that can account for that upsell for the that little amount of percentage the dealership would make in terms of profit, and the factory will cover it. Those are what you're going to want to look for. So again, when you're looking at purchasing a vehicle, the best times to do it are towards the end of the year. You're going to want to look for a vehicle that's been on the lot for a long time. So you're going to want to look for the lowest denomination stock unit you possibly can, and you can oftentimes do that online, because they will have their full stock online. You want to look for vehicles that, like, you can look in the wheel and you can see rust in the brake caliper, or on the brake rotor, I should say, because the calipers haven't been rotated and turned to break the rust off. That means that car's been sitting there. Oftentimes, I always tell people to go car shopping on rainy days. They're less likely to do as much of the sales talk and want to walk around, and you always try to do all the talking outside in the rain. That way, you can kind of get the actual breakdown of what that car is going to cost. Because again, if you're accepting with it, you can get a fair deal with the vehicle. Also, too, those dealer incentives at the end of fiscal quarters is when dealerships are going to be more motivated to sell you a vehicle. When I say towards the fiscal end, like, you might be making a car deal at 11 o'clock at night on the last day of that fiscal end, because they have to meet one more car model to be able to get that big dealer incentive. And upwards, sometimes those can pay out the dealership upwards of $250,000 to $500,000. So a lot of dealerships will be very motivated then to try to sell a car, and you might be able to get a better deal then. Now, if you're just doing it, in general terms, you're looking at, a reasonable offer, is you'd be taking about 4% off of the dealer cost. And you're going to want to look at, not paying a bunch of the convenience charges, so on and so forth, that might mean. So it is important to make sure that you understand you're not trying to insult or low bid that offer. And when we look at like CarMax and stuff like that, their prices are set because of that. Now, buying used cars are a whole different animal in themselves, and we're going to use this as an example here in just a little bit. Now, you can buy used car from a plethora of different areas. You can get used cars from regular auto dealerships. We brought up that the reason why they like leases is because leases make really good obtainable used cars for manufacturers. Internet sales are going to be a big one. So you're looking at like eBay, OfferUp, all those different types of internet type sales, Cars and Bids, so on and so forth. Independent used car lots, those are going to be hit or miss. Again, we talked about the pay here, buy here. There's going to be private sellers, literally a person putting a for sale sign on the side of the street. Hey, buy this car. You can also get them from car rental sales, which I would avoid at all costs. Because you know how they say, be gentle, it's a rental. No one does that. Everyone treats rental cars very, very poorly, and you don't want to buy that as a car. Now, auctions, that's the third one down. Auctions are tricky because there's a lot of the auctions that you could actually get a good, cheap car at, you'd have to have a dealer license. And so those oftentimes are out of the realm of when you could actually purchase that vehicle. But you can buy cars from auctions. It is possible. We're also looking at independent repair facilities. Sometimes if they have a lien sale, they can do that as well. So those are other options for you for purchasing a vehicle. Now, when you're test driving a used car versus a new cars obviously should function. However, used cars, you're going to be looking over a lot more, right? Because that car has some miles on it. There's going to be some wear. So you're looking at, what kind of condition the body panels are in, what kind of condition the tires are in, so on and so forth. Do all the lights work? Does it look like there's any oil leaks, so on and so forth. And you want to do kind of a pretty thorough inspection. It's not a bad idea to take a mirror on a stick and a flashlight to kind of look at around the vehicle, see if there's rust in certain areas, so on and so forth. Now, buying a used car, it is important to pay attention to the reliability. Going through and seeing how reliable that car is on top of what you're actually purchasing. So when it comes to the title, if you're purchasing a used car, the title needs to be in whoever you're purchasing its hand. If it's a private seller, they need to be the title holder. They're the only ones that you should be dealing with. There's a bunch of different type of titles that you can buy that are red flags. So one of the things that you can have is you can buy a salvage title vehicle. Now, salvage title vehicles can fall under a couple different categories. It can be a theft recovery salvage. So a vehicle that the owner was paid out because the car was stolen, but it eventually was recovered and was refurbished. That will increase your insurance because it's a vehicle that's already been stolen. It might be stolen again because if they took copies of the keys. You can have a flood or a fire salvage title vehicle. Again, might not be a bad vehicle to buy after it's been rebuilt. However, it still is something that will associate with your insurance. Collision, same thing. It's one of those things you want to try to avoid. Now, there are a couple states that will expunge a vehicle's history. California is not one of them. So you can buy a car out of state. Georgia is an example of one that it may have been a totaled vehicle in North Carolina, and then it was retitled in Georgia, and that it's cleaned its title. However, that's going to be one of those things that you kind of do want to know, right? If the vehicle was titled, you want to try to keep track of that. So you want to make sure that you are looking at that vehicle's history if you possibly can. There are Carfax and everything, but you do need to understand that a lot of manufacturers or shop repair facilities, body shops, they will not always report to Carfax. So it's one of those things you got to kind of take with a grain of salt. Now, when we're looking at comparable car prices, there's a couple different places you can go. You can go to Kelley Blue Book, you can go to Edmunds, you can go to NADA, and that can give you average prices for a vehicle. Now, that's going to be based off of a couple different criteria in terms of vehicle condition, so on and so forth. So if we give a couple examples of vehicles that are all 2015 model year range with around 40,000 miles in good / clean condition, we're looking at that price range varying several $1,000s from site to site. Oftentimes the seller is always going to obviously take the higher number and you're going to want to go the lower number. Now, condition is subjective to many things and can be negotiated. However, when you negotiate for a car, you got to do that at a particular time. So when you're looking at a used car, knowing what the value is in the back of your head, you've done your research, you're going to make sure that you bring up all of the flaws of the vehicle first and foremost before you start to agree on a price. So you're going to want to make sure that you've done your full test drive. You want to make sure you understand how the vehicle is driving, operating, and going down the road. And then you want to look at the vehicle and determine whether or not it's going to be a viable expense for you to make. So after that, then you start negotiating price. And once you've talked about price, you can't go back and change your mind if you find something that's bad again. So you need to know the approximate value of the vehicle. So do your homework ahead of time before you go out there. You need to make a reasonable offer based off of condition and mileage. You don't want to just lowball them right off the bat. It's usually best to always negotiate price in person. Don't do it over the phone or over text or over email. You're going to do it in person is going to be the best thing. I have found that you do very strange increments when you do a car. So if you have a car that they're trying to sell it for $6,000, you go like, all right, well, I'll give you, and you want to pay 5,500 for it. You're always going to start a little bit lower, and you go like, yeah, I'll give you, 5,125 for it. And why you do that is you throw off the person slightly. So what you're doing is you're giving them kind of an obscure number. So they're like, what? Well, why is it that number? And so then they kind of have to do the math in their head, and they might get down to your number a little bit quicker. So it is something that it can be a benefit for that. Be willing to walk away at any time. When you go to buy a vehicle too, don't go alone. Always bring someone with you. And oftentimes make sure that person is a full understanding of what's going on. Don't bring your sketchy friend or your clueless friend that's not very good at reading body language. You want to make sure you're bringing someone that can understand how you are and your personality. And if you're going to walk away, you definitely want to keep a poker face on. So my example of car that I bought at auction is that black Subaru right there. So the way that Subaru worked was that Subaru got traded in at a dealership, and it was one that I was looking for in particular. It's a Legacy GT, and it's one that I wanted based off of criteria that I wanted. I wanted it to be a GT, a wagon, and I wasn't so concerned about color. So I looked around at a bunch of different auto advertisers, and I found that one on Auto Trader. And the story had gone, it got traded in at a dealership. The dealership then sent it to a wholesale auction because it had pretty high mileage and it was a little bit rough. It went through the wholesale auction and was bought as a lot group. A lot group meaning that a pay here, buy here lot wanted to sell it on there, or wanted to sell a certain amount of cars, and they were forced to get that car in on the deal. So they may have wanted like 7 or 8 vehicles, and the auction house goes, sure, you can have those 7 or 8 vehicles, but you're also paying for these 3 as well. So that car was then bought in a lot purchase. It was put on a pay here, buy here lot, and it was on that lot for about 8 months before they couldn't sell it. They then brought it back to an auction, another used car auction, and it went through the auction process 2 times and failed to sell every time. From there, the auction house put it up on offer on Auto Trader. I called them up and found the vehicle, and it was a very sketchy area, Long Beach. It was a big, giant industrial park, and they had this giant warehouse that was just filled with gold, tan, and white 4-door sedans, nondescript sedans. And my black station wagon stuck out like a sore thumb because that wasn't the typical car that they were trying to sell. Because again, they're trying to sell to pay here, buy here used car lots, which are selling pretty atypical sedans so that they can get someone with really bad credit into a car and then eventually repo it. They did not want a turbocharged all-wheel drive station wagon. That doesn't fit the make of what they wanted to sell. The dude that was selling me the car was exceptionally racist and didn't really want to play ball that much until I basically said like, look, I'm ready to walk away. Didn't want to let me test drive it. Didn't want to let me even really look at it. It was one of those like, I'll leave at any time. It doesn't matter. But they needed to get rid of the car at that point. He knew that I was there and I had cash in hand and I was ready to buy the car. So we worked out a way that I could test drive the vehicle because again, I know it was against their policy, but they made it work, and I was able to get it for about $3,000 less than what they were asking for because I was physically there in person. And it was funny because I negotiated the price and I gave them the price and I shot really low knowing that there was some issues with the car. he came back with $100 more. And it was one of those like, okay, if you feel like you're going to win, I'm not going to argue over $100. Sure, let's do it. And we made the car deal. Now I've had to put a considerable amount into that car because it did eventually blow the motor up because it did Subaru things. But I absolutely love the car and it was worthwhile. However, it wasn't exactly a normal car purchasing event. And so you need to be willing to walk away at any time. So some red flags that you want to look at when you're purchasing a used car is any number of these are going to be issues that you're going to run into. So if the title is not in hand, that's going to be kind of a key thing. You want to make sure it has valid registration. You want to make sure there's no back fees associated with that registration. So you're going to be wanting to make sure that that vehicle doesn't owe fees. My car ended up owing fees. I didn't know that. I didn't do my due diligence to check that. That's where you want to make sure that you have the vehicle license plate, and you can run that through the DMV system really quick to see if there's any outstanding fines or issues with it. Keep in mind that moving violations, so traffic tickets, those go with the driver. Parking tickets stay with the vehicle. So you can be purchasing a vehicle from someone that has multiple parking tickets and they have not paid them. You have to pay them as the new registered owner. So keep that in mind. You want to avoid doing out-of-state vehicles at all possible, again, because you can have that expunged title that won't be easily insured. In some states, it's not registerable. A lot of the northeastern states, none of that stuff is registerable. It's all going to be something that you can't keep the vehicle at that point. You want to thoroughly inspect it for accident damage, flood damage, and modifications. Now, this kind of goes along with selling a vehicle. Just because you've modified a vehicle to your taste does not mean that that vehicle is going to increases its value. A lot of times it actually lowers the vehicle's value. Same thing with modifications. You can use that as like a, yeah, maybe someone has done X, Y, and Z to a vehicle, but you can use that as a negotiating factor to kind of go like, well, it's not what I want. I don't want that on this particular car. So what I have photoed here is I have a couple examples of red flags. So as we work through these photos, we're going to start here in the upper left corner. So there's paint overspray. So what you're looking at is you're opening the door jambs and you're looking at the components that otherwise would be black. So in this case, we can see this is a four-door vehicle. So we have the driver's side front door open, and we're looking back at the passenger side, the left rear passenger door. And we can see that this had been repainted with the doors closed, and a little bit of paint had gone through the gap between the two doors and had gotten on that electrical conduit. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing if the repair work was done well. However, it is one of those things that was a sign the car was in an accident or had something to where it had to be resprayed. And if the owner can't give you a valid reason for that, again, that's something that might be a red flag. You do want to start to try to pull off some of the paneling. So going from the right side of the screen, we have two examples of flood type damage. So in this case, the center console back cover, which can come off pretty easily, was popped off, and you can see a very clear kind of dirt and sediment line. And now when cars get detailed, they often don't pull any of these panels off to be able to check that. And so you can see that there was a water line, right? And that car was submerged. I am dealing with right now a vehicle that was a submerged car. It's a 2002 Viper that was flooded. It was flooded a number of years ago, and it has a bunch of rust damage because of that flood. The car runs and drives, and it runs and drives all right. However, its value is considerably lower because it was a flood recovery vehicle. And you can see the picture right below that with the speaker grill. You can see where there's sediment that has a very distinct line. That is another indication that it's been flooded. You can see that, however, the car has been detailed, but it's hard to get that out of that speaker grill without fully removing that and washing it out. The other thing you want to look for is sediment in top areas where the water might dry out, so on top of the fender, so on and so forth. The next picture on the lower left, this is an indication that the hood's been off. So you can see this was witness marks from a tool, wrench or ratchet going on that. Now, when we're looking at that, that doesn't necessarily indicate that it might have had an accident, but it does indicate that the hood came off for some reason. Oftentimes hoods come off to replace the engine. So that might be one of those like, hey, did you have an engine replaced recently? Oftentimes people are pretty honest with engine replacement because they feel that that ups the value. Now, other accident damage that we can look at. So again, starting in the left upright corner on our little Kia right here, you can clearly see that the two doors don't match in paint. There's a clear differentiating factor between the two door colors there. We have one door color that is slightly off. As car paint fades, it changes its pigment. And so if you respray a vehicle just based off of its paint code, it might not be as clear and crisp. A good paint shop and a good body shop will take the gas door or another panel that's been in the sun with similar UV damage and match the paint based off of that. But that we can tell that that car has had the door, at least one of the doors repainted. You can see that back right rear door is a different color than the front door, the front fender, and the back quarter panel. When we're looking at the picture right below that on the left, we can see the blue Jeep Patriot. It has some rust coming out of the fender. When you have rust like that, it's important to understand that rust is like an iceberg in the ocean. What you can see is only about 10% of the damage. If we have rust in that quarter panel, we're more than likely going to have rust further up the panel and further back out. Now, why rust is an issue is that lowers the structural integrity of the vehicle. Obviously, it makes it to where the vehicle might have some creaks and rattles, and it can be considerably expensive to repair. That quarter panel is going to be a big chunk of price. If it's not a very expensive vehicle, it might not be worth looking at. Now, a vehicle could look exterior wise beautiful, right? So you can see the rest of that paint because it came from an area that doesn't have as much UV damage. The other blue paint is beautiful, right? And it can polish up really nice. You want to look under vehicles. You want to, look under vehicles. That's why you want to have that mirror to look and see if you can see rust and other forms of oxidation. Now on the top right, this is a door panel that was painted very well. You can see a little bit of orange peeling on the reflection. However, it wasn't fitted very well. You can see that there's a chrome kind of trim line that goes along the perimeter of that glass, and it is not lining up with the back glass. So you can see there's about 1/8 of an inch difference from all around that door, and that's an indication that there's a possibility of an issue with that door fitment or that it's been in an accident or a collision. And again, you want to get some clarification on that. The other thing that's often forgotten is, so the lower right picture, there's a sticker right here. This is one of the emission stickers. Oftentimes, if a body shop has not done a good enough job, they'll forget to put these stickers in place. So if you pop the hood or you look on the radiator cowl and there's supposed to be pictures or stickers, and they're not there, that's an indication that is a replacement panel. The other thing you want to look for too is if you can get under a vehicle and you can look under, a lot of times if a body shop's going quick, you can see the replacement part sticker in the component, or you can see that component isn't painted properly. Now, all of this said, that doesn't necessarily detract from you needing to buy or wanting to buy the vehicle, but it does lower the price that you should be paying with that. Now, again, when you're going to buy a vehicle or sell a vehicle, either way, you never do it alone. You always have someone with you. You have someone that you absolutely trust with you. And you have a means of transportation to get out of there. You want to meet in nondescript areas. You don't meet at your home. You don't meet at your work. You're going to go meet at the Walmart parking lot, the Target parking lot, so on and so forth. Like I said, when I bought my Subaru wagon, I bought it at the facility that was selling it. Not necessarily the best idea, but that was the only option I had for that particular car. You always want to do used car purchases during daylight hours. Don't do it at night. If the only time they can meet is at night, 9 o'clock at night, and it's a rainy day, pass up on that car. Don't buy that car. Wait for the next one to come. You always have to have that as the case. Again, they have to have the title in hand, and have a written sales agreement. A written sales agreement, you can very easily do a quick Google search, and you can find one online that you can print out. You and the selling party, or you and buying party, whichever it may be, sign. And it's a kind of a legal agreement that kind of shows you're buying the car as is, where is, no warranty implied, so on and so forth. And make sure there's a copy for you and for the seller. And definitely do your homework with that. Now, selling your car goes along the same manners. You want to make sure you're being honest with the sale. Take good pictures of it. You will have to do sales tax in most areas on any car purchase, whether or not it's new or used. You also too, you're responsible for smogging the vehicle ahead of time, and making sure you do the proper taxes that go along with that. So now one of the things I want to bring up with car purchases as an example. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate away from here, and we're going to go to my favorite website in the entire world, and that is OfferUp. Now, OfferUp is great because it has a plethora of junk and good stuff. So let's make sure that I can have this sharing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just on OfferUp, just put it in, and we're going to start looking at some of the vehicles. So if I look at cars and trucks, we're going to look at some vehicles that have red flags and some vehicles that are a little bit decent. Now, one of the things that I see as issues are there's stuff that's going to be too good to be true, and then some other red flags. So if you look kind of nondescript vehicles, so ones that are like decent, so like this Ford Edge, for instance, we're looking at, they have the license plate pictured. I like that. If they're covering the license plate, that's a red flag. You need to understand, no one owns license plates. People that own the license plate is the state of California. If you don't have visualization of the license plate, you can't do the checks to see if it's registered properly. So this is an example that the license plate is uncovered, and that's not a bad gig. Now, downside of this is we only have 3 pictures. So I have a picture in the front, a picture to the side, and another picture to the side. I don't have any of the interior, and I don't have any of the engine, so on and so forth. So that is a little bit of a red flag in that sense, is that I don't have that info. When we look at the description, right there is we start to get an issue. 2011 Ford Edge salvage. So that's telling me that it already is a salvage title vehicle. And if we look up the year, make, model on Kelley Blue Book, for instance, we want to make sure that it has the value is representative of that. Now, they don't say what the salvage is. They don't also say, what ended up happening to the vehicle, how it was repaired, so on and so forth. So it is going to be one of the things that we do want to take that into consideration when we're looking at purchasing a vehicle. So that one's probably one to walk away from. Now, if we start to look down, okay, see, so now my interest is getting piqued. We have a Subaru Brat, right? Now, when we're looking at this, obviously 0 miles is going to be a little bit of a red flag. However, $2,200 for a Subaru Brat, that's not too terribly bad. We have photos of multiple areas of the car. However, I would like multiple photos. Make sure there's quality photos. I don't really want to see the dude's index finger, or that they park in a neighborhood where they're, getting rear-ended. Not the greatest photos. When we look at the description, again, I'm selling this toy because it needs to work. We need to have more description than that. The other thing we want to look at too is the map or the area that this vehicle is being sold in. This is being sold in an area that is somewhat normal. Now, relatively decent car. However, it is one of those things we do kind of want to probably walk away from that. Now, you can see some of these, like this 2019 Mustang, that is a vehicle that is being sold at a dealership. So we'll have better photos and stuff that goes along with that. But what we want to try to avoid is cars that seem too good to be true. And if we look around, I don't see a ton right now. Let's look at this 2003 Subaru or Lexus SC430, arguably a car that is not the best. Now, we have multiple photos. They were taken really poorly on a phone, but we can see oxidation on the paint. We can see all 4 corners. We can see that the top's going up, has a picture of the interior. Those aren't too terribly bad. Now, when we look at this, again, another salvage title in hand with current tags. So again, this one's going to have some registration and insuring issues. However, he does say title in hand, so that is a good start. Great daily driver, very reliable, fun to drive, also great car for work. I got it salvaged from a previous owner, not sure why. Full AC, great highway driver, convertible top works great, navigation, no trades, please, thank you. So again, not a bad option.
the salvage reason is, you know, we know that that's going to be an issue. But for the price point, it's not terribly bad. Oddly enough, I'm not finding really any glaringly terrible cars right off the bat. Now, here's a car that is grossly overpriced. So Honda Accord for $6,495, and this is at a pay here, buy here used car lot. Now they're going to give you a lot of information, lots of photos of the car, right? And a pretty good description of it. Although granted, they don't give you any description of it. All they say is our dealership works with all types of credit, state ID lines, passports accepted, yada yada yada. So let's use this car as a comparison. So it's a 1999 Honda Accord, and it is, just to make sure that I have the right trim level, it is a 6-cylinder car. Oh no, 4-cylinder car. All right, 4-cylinder car. So let's look up Kelley Blue Book's value for this vehicle. So if I go to car values, new and used car price values, we're then going to go priced new and used. Well, obviously turn off their ads. My car's value, excuse me. So we're going to do it based off of make and model. So we're going to do, although I think I have the VIN here. Yeah, let's do it off the VIN. So doing it off the VIN, this will allow us to get more information. So we'll hit go. So it's found the car. So it sees it as a LX sedan, 4-door, 2.3 liter automatic front wheel drive. Now mileage on it. Do they say what mileage is on it? 154.47. Let's do 155. And we're going to do it as Irvine zip code. I always do it as Irvine zip code. The reason being is it's centralized in the Orange County, and it gives the best average price because Irvine's such a large city. Now it's going to give us what the options of the vehicle are. We don't quite know. The one thing that I can do is I can do color. Color does affect the price of the car's price value, and this one is their darker green. Other than that, we won't worry about any of the other options. Are there any modifications? No. Hit next. And then what this will give me is this will give me a couple things that are going to be ads, and then it's going to give me the quality. So wear and damage. Now looking at the picture of it, I would say we're probably just going to, come on, give me the value. It's not what I'm looking for. Hey, that is the one problem with Kelley Blue Book, is it makes it to where it doesn't make it easy to get the car values. All right, so now we get to the screen we want to look at. Now there's going to be a couple ranges. There's going to be excellent, there's going to be good and clean, and then there's going to be in the red. Now, this is trade-in value versus private party. So we're already looking, we're going to treat this as private party. So if this car is in excellent condition, this 1999 Honda Accord, has a value of $1,000 to $2,000 based off of it being in excellent condition, or at least clean condition. That's where that $6,000 is a little bit too high. But again, this is a predatory pay here, buy here used car lot. The car is in fairly good condition. I will have to admit that. However, that doesn't mean that this car is worth that. So we're looking at, you know, the car's actual value is, we'll say upwards of this, it's probably $2,500. But there's a big difference in price there. So that's why you'd want to avoid that. However, what that used car lot is trying to do is they're trying to get someone that has really poor credit to buy the vehicle. Now, You might be looking at this and going, okay, there's a big price difference between trade-in and private party. And now why does that matter? Well, trade-in is going to be the value that you'd get from the vehicle if you trade it into a dealership against the purchase of a new vehicle. And in this case, if you have an older vehicle like this Honda Accord, it's going to be detrimental for you to go and purchase it or to trade it in. You could get more money selling it private party. However, it is going to take a little bit more work. So you can see we're losing about $1,700 on the potential value of the vehicle for the convenience of trading it in. And you've got to look at that dealership or whoever you're trading the vehicle into has to get their money out of the vehicle. They have to be able to recoup some of their expenses in terms of operation. So it is considered kind of on average. But this does give you an example of sometimes stuff can be too expensive. So this is a case of this is way too expensive of a vehicle. And again, Chula Vista, we're right outside of base. They're looking at kind of taking advantage of people in that sense. And we can see a bunch of other ones. So we can see the Ford Focus here, the Corolla, all of these vehicles are examples of vehicles that are going to be too good to be true. Now, as you scroll through again, you can do different parameters on what kind of cars you want to look at and what kind of cars you're going to want. Again, we want to make sure that we're looking for a red flag. So this is an example of a red flag to me. They have edited the photo so that the license plate is not in it. It is one of those things that, again, I want to be able to double check the registration on the vehicle to make sure that it's liable. You don't always want to take the owner's word for it. Now, there's decent photos of it, although those stains in the middle of the seat are slightly concerning, just because that's gross. And it is in a central area, but again, not a ton of info. Now it does say car burns oil, muffler noises, needs 3 tires. So they're being fairly honest with that description. However, again, we're looking at covering the license plate as a red flag in terms of purchasing the vehicle. There's not a really ton of really good ones. All right, another car that you could be buying based off of passion, right? Older Toyota Supra. Now, $600 for a Toyota Supra. This is going to be an NA one. However, still a car that you might buy based off of passion. This car is absolutely ropey and rough. You can see a fair amount of rust coming through the panels. They've done a little bit of body work in the front end. Probably not a car that's going to be really worthwhile. Now, for $600, let's see what you're getting. So selling the rolling shell. Rolling shell means no motor. So the car looks exactly how I got it. Tons of parts inside previous owner gave me. Back floor cut out for fuel cell. So we already have a vehicle that is going to be probably not registerable because it has been taken apart. I was going to make it into a drift missile. So he's being honest. I have the title, $729 and back fees have been paid. I have paperwork to show. Some over fenders will cover the hammered quarter panels. Only one seat inside, brakes and all stuff there. Windows intact, doors shut good. Now, it says he's already paid the $729 in back fees. However, it doesn't say that it's currently registered. So that still can be incurring back fees. Now, here's the other big red flag. So it says that he's in Simi Valley. However, if we look on the map of where it was posted, there are no streets there. There's none whatsoever. So this is another thing that I've seen as a red flag, is the people will link their phone either through a VPN or through other forms where they will put it to where you can't find where the car is actually located. Now, oftentimes they can be doing that to hide, the address of where they live. However, you want to be really careful with that because you can find cars that are way far afield and not being posted where they're saying they're being posted. You also want to avoid too the individuals that say, I'm posting this for a friend, or this is my grandfather's car and I'm selling it for them. You want to avoid those ones. You want to deal with the registered owner only. So what I'm going to encourage you all to do is I'm going to encourage you all to jump on OfferUp, Auto Trader, and tomorrow find some cars and bring them in and show cars that definitely have some issues with them. Let's see what kind of stuff you all can find. And again, we're wanting to look at, we're wanting to try to figure out good car deals. So for lab tomorrow, we're going to be doing a couple things. I'm going to be showing you how to inspect a used car. We're going to use my car as an example. so that you can go through and find damage and find red flags in terms of body and paint. We're also going to do lift training. So you're going to be all lifting vehicles on your own with floor jacks and with the vehicles inside the lift. And then we're also going to I'm going to set up a used car lot. I have a bunch of cars I'm going to set out with used car placards on it that you're going to go through, and you're going to use and see if they're viable to purchase. So we have a lot of different things that we're going to be doing. Now, I need you all to make sure that you have your SP2 automotive service safety, your ALI Lift Institute training, and your pollution prevention done. You need to have all three done. Now, I sent you all an email and a notification yesterday indicating that we needed to have that training done. If you don't have it done, you're going to be on one of the computers in here in the lab area, and I'm going to be having you do it before you can participate in the lab. And if you miss those labs, you're not graded for it. So please make sure you're getting that training done now. The directions and everything are up on the course Canvas page. I have already gone through and graded those of you that have done some of the training. I will go through and double check again tonight, and I will have a list. So when you sign in, if your name is highlighted, that means you're missing training, and I have to have you get one of those trainings done. So please make sure that we are getting that taken care of, and there's no issues with that. So the safety training is going to be paramount. But again, we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff tomorrow in class. So please make sure you're on time, and please make sure we're paying attention and ready to work. Other than that, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the lectures.